Welcome to Beyond Belief, the art of strange mentalism, with your host, Tommy Burnett. This week's special guest is Luke Robson. And now your host, Tommy Burnett.
Hello. I gotta change that. There's too much of a black spot in between the video and myself. Hi, welcome back to Beyond Belief, the art of strange mentalism. My name is Tommy Burnett, and I will be your host for the next hour. We have a great show lined up. A friend of mine that I met 3.5 years ago or so in the UK at Doomsday. I always want to say like Deadpool because it's like a hybrid, a combination of Blackpool and Doom. But if Doomsday before Magic Convention, one of my favorite places in the whole world. And I believe that's where we first met. It might have been at Blackpool before then, but I think it was at Doomsday. But we'll figure that out at some point. Anyway, let me bring out my good friend Luke Robson, and here he is. Hey, Luke.
Hello there.
How are you, my friend?
Very good, thanks.
Good. Thanks for agreeing to be on the show. I'm always pleased when people say yes, because deep down in the pit of my stomach, I'm always thinking they're going to say no. So, even after, I've been doing this now on and off for, since the pandemic, and so it's over 5 years, and it's still in the pit of my stomach. I'm like, oh, I hope they say yes. So thanks for being here. Now I know we have people here in the audience who do know you, but for those watching right now who may or may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a hard question? What kind of magic do you do?
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me on. It's quite a privilege to be asked, so I really appreciate it, because I'm kind of one of those people in magic. Like, there are lots of people who sadly don't get to perform or do magic as their full-time income. So I've always had it alongside kind of a career, which has always sort of made it a challenging thing to build on and develop. So it was always about finding kind of opportunities. So my interest in magic, in the simplest form, is to say I'm interested in classic magic. The truth is I'm interested in all types of magic, but the magic form is more the kind of classic magic. And when I get to perform, it can be in a variety of sort of different settings. So I perform in different ways, so it's not always the sort of same act. Right. So for the work I do myself, which is very specifically magic, I might either be in the white tie and tails, like the image you've used in the teaser video, right. And that is kind of the linking rings, or often things that are relating to Houdini, so some rope escape element, the needle swallow, East Indian needle movie, some spirit slate stuff, and things that kind of feel like they're of a period of an age gone by. And that kind of came because I was doing some stuff with a museum, and I was doing Victorian Christmas markets are quite a thing in the UK. So I thought that's actually not a bad place to go. And I was very interested in street magic when I first started performing magic. So I did magic as a kid. I had a misguided teenage years where I decided to leave magic or wasn't pursuing it.
Yeah.
And then in my mid-20s or early to mid-20s, around 23, I think it might have been, I went back to it with some seriousness. So I thought, well, actually, I really liked street magic. And the first magic trick I was ever taught was by a street juggler who used to be a big street entertainer, you know, big circle shows. So I thought, oh, well, I'll kind of get back into that. And I thought, well, I'll go up and do Edinburgh. Right.
Okay.
I'd barely done anything. I'd done a couple of things and thought I'd do Edinburgh. So I approached a museum that had a public event. And I said, can I come down and just to practice, basically, to do some things? And they said, well, yes, you can. We'd be happy to have you. But it's a 1940s event. So for you to do it, you would have to be in 1940s attire.
Right.
And so I'd kind of been like dabbling with magic a couple of years by that point. And that's when I started this relationship with this museum. And I did the weekend for them. And that event probably ran for another 5 years after that. And I was booked on every event, every one of those 1940s weekends from then on. And then the Christmas market that same museum did, I've been doing now since 2015. I've done every year since 2015. Obviously, there was a COVID gap, and that's there. So my joke used to be, it's the same act but different mustache. It's not quite like that. But with the magic that I do, I tend to do a lot of the same tricks regardless of the context. But I might change the framing of it or the presentation. For instance, I think a lot of people will, or the thing people in magic are starting to know me for in a little bit is linking rings. And that's one of my favorite sort of routines. Now I'll do that on a street style show or at the museums. I'm tend to doing a kind of a crowd stop sidewalk show kind of thing, half an hour set. So that I could be repeating those linking ring moves several times during that just to build up the crowd. Whereas if I'm doing it in a parlor setting or in a cabaret show or a more formal show, then that's going to be a very tight, specific 3-minute.
Okay, I'm still here.
Yeah, so you drop off there. It would be a very tight 3-minute routine, but the presentation, the moves may remain the same, but I might take a bit more time with it in another format or a little bit more of the audience interaction element, or just sort of dial up this here and tone that down there. And I think that's probably true of kind of a lot of the magic that I do. I do a bit of walk around and such, but that doesn't kind of get me going. And kind of slightly magic adjacent, there is a street theatre company who were based in a building that I used to manage. And it got to kind of a point where I'd always pop by their place and then eventually, oh, come and do some stuff with us. Or they would involve magic with within their shows. And it was often quite in a more comedic sort of way. And so now I've been working with them for maybe about 6-7 years now. So what's great about that is they provide the costume, they book the gigs. I just sort of rock up. They've got flexibility within their shows that I can do routines that I know, or bits that I want to kind of involve. And those ones we're either going around as ghosts at Halloween or as Victorian explorers or kind of weird Christmas elves, but sort of doing magic. And working with those is really interesting because it's very much more on a clowning element, and just sort of walking about a town centre, providing magic and entertainment where people aren't necessarily expecting it. Sometimes they're just going around. They've been booked by a local authority or a shopping mall, or or for a particular event. So sometimes people are there waiting and expecting to see entertainment. Sometimes they're kind of not. And you just sort of, you go out and you have no idea what's going to happen, because nobody might stop. And then sometimes loads of people stop, and then you're having to deal with how you're tackling a crowd that's just naturally built where you don't need it. But what I've learned from that is a more of a looseness and a playfulness that comes from it. Because actually, I could suffer from the nerves aspect, and like performing could become a bit rigid and stilted. And I think we get better hopefully we get better the more times that we perform. Right. That, I think, is the intention. But the other thing is, and you get more relaxed in doing it. That's why I think doing new material becomes so hard. I think the longer we do routines, I think what my strongest routines are the ones that when I returned to magic about 13 years ago, it's those routines that are the strongest, but they've had 13 years of work.
Right.
You know? So actually to introduce anything new becomes very hard. Yeah. Because you're holding it by that sort of same level. And I think that's a hurdle all magicians have to kind of get over at some point. There's some people that seem to do a new trick every table and a new trick every gig. Which I don't really get, but
Yeah, well, I forget who said it. Somebody may know, but there's a saying that goes something along the lines of an amateur performs different effects for the same people, where a professional performs the same thing for different people.
Yeah, I've heard that one, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I guess that's all I had to say about that. I thought I had more, but that was it.
I think it's that.
Yeah.
I think there is an element of trying to hone in on kind of that material, and rather than going, I've got a gig, I've got to do something new. You can have sometimes those issues where, say, these sort of museum gigs, you might be doing 3 shows across that day, and it's possible that you might end up having a little fan, and they turn up and want to see, and it's a bit like you're doing the cups and balls, and you get into the melon, and you ask a rhetorical question of how many balls under the hat, and if the kid shouts a melon, it's a bit like, oh God, no.
Absolutely.
But your shoulders end up broadening anyway, and you get over it, I
think. Matt King is a great example of doing the same act over and over and over, and occasionally changing one small aspect of the act, but he's pretty much been doing the same act for like over 20 years, and I personally would get bored doing the same act for 20 years. That's just me though. I don't think I've done anything the same in 20 years, except maybe having high blood pressure. But other than that, boom, that was a joke. I don't do as many shows as I used to, so I tend to perform for the same audiences more than once. So I tend to do a different act each time because I know there'll be predominantly 75 to 80% of my audience will have been at my last show. That's just the way it is for me now.
And here's a potential perspective in a way.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's not to say I think this, but you could look at it upon this point. The same material, putting in new material is more selfish because it's kind of for ourselves in a
yeah,
way that when we've done the same stuff repeatedly so many times.
yeah, yeah.
But the thing to remember is, of course, that the audience, it's hopefully new to them because it's
Right,
different audiences or
right,
such like that. Now, if you're hosting a cabaret show or a regular spot where you've got other guest artists and you're hosting it, you can't do the same material every month you host that.
right,
That sort of stuff I can kind of get.
right.
But
Yeah,
really, it's sort of like if we feel we have to change the material, not because we're getting bored, but because we think we need better material. Should we not be making the material we already do better? Because
right.
it might be that the material isn't necessarily bad. It's not
Yeah,
being done well.
right. Well, yeah,
I question myself on that quite a lot. I'm actually
good.
really self-critical. People might not realize how self-critical I can be
Yeah,
on
oh
certain
yeah,
things
yeah.
like that.
No, for me, it's not questioning myself. For me, it's reprimanding myself for it, not being better than it could be. Uh, uh, um, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You know, and I think most of us are like that. Ian, can you mute yourself? I can hear you typing. Thank you. Well, I'll mute you. Thank you, Ian.
You see, one of the shows that I get to do, I've done about 4 times now, is the public close-up shows at the Magic Circle,
Okay.
and they're a great thing to do. It's a little bit of a stretch for me to kind of get to, but it's a great one for kind of keeping your hand in if you're not sure when those sort of gigs are going to come
Yeah,
next.
yeah,
So the reason why I mention those is because shared bill gigs where you've got other magicians performing in a specific environment. So inevitably, especially when you're doing classic material,
yeah, yeah.
there's going to be crossover from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes the challenge is, you want to have your A to B and move on to C, and then that might cross-reference back to
Yeah.
B later on and wraps up, and then that sort of finish there. And a friend of mine said, really, what you need is a modular act. So you've got a few potential openers, a few good middle tricks, and you've got a few good sort of closers, and then you can just sort of pick and choose it from there. And obviously, when we try to be more theatrical, we kind of don't like that sort of that modular approach, because you want it to be very tight and slick and make more sense. And if one trick is removed from that flow, it maybe isn't as strong. But even if it isn't as strong, it doesn't feel as strong, because there's a difference there sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
How you're perceiving it. So for an example, in that sort of environment, I tend to do a chop cup, and the chop cup will have a lemon, and then from the lemon it'll be lemon. Inside the lemon is an egg, walnut,
Yeah,
pecan,
yeah. Well,
because it kind of calls back. But also in the chop cup, rather than a lime, I have an egg, so then when that refers back. So I've got this idea, and it's part of where the act is sort of sets going, is to also have a free shell game at the beginning, so that introduces walnuts.
okay. Yeah.
And then it all links together, and eventually I want to use walnuts into the chop cup instead of the crochet balls. But that's kind of that work in progress.
Yeah.
But as soon as somebody now wants to do a chop cup, and you go, okay, fair enough, you do a chop cup, I've got to do a lot of material in my 20 minutes. Now and that the lemon trick's a good closer. So, and then you're thinking, well, I don't want to just pull out a lemon because actually part of the surprise is it's there in sight and now you're referring back to it. So you have to then find another way to regain that same structure.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I've tried to do like, brand new stuff, not in that, but in previous things
Yeah.
when that
Yeah.
situation's occurred. And I think that's another big challenge in magic is, as for a performer, is what to do if you can't do the trick you wanted to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's happened to me a number of times. Um, Most memorable was about 15 years ago. I started to do my main effect for my act at that time, and the featured performer was in the back of the audience and basically stopped me in the middle of my act and said, "You can't do that. I'm doing that in my act." And I was like, "Okay." Not in my mind, not very professional of you, but I'm professional enough to do something else, you know. I don't even remember what it was, but um, you know, you have to be able to roll with whatever is thrown at you. Um, and so, yeah, I agree with you 100%. We get we had our year end meeting of our IBM ring last night, and we have like a social. We all eat pizza and have soda, and then we get 3 people to perform, and um, we hire out an art gallery that I found for the group because our last venue basically said they closed and then reopened and said we don't want you to come back. So anyway, um, the middle act last night before the show comes up to me and says, "So, um, I um, I know this is an art gallery, but is it okay if I use my fire wallet?" And I'm like, "No, it's not okay. This is an art gallery. You see that painting over there? That's worth $1,000. Are you willing to pay $1,000 if anything should happen?" And he was, "Yeah, but you don't understand." And I said, "Young man, it's not I who doesn't understand. It's you who doesn't understand. You've been given a parameter, which is you may not at any time use a firewall or anything using fire in this facility because we can get kicked out if anything bad happens." And I'm being nice when I say young man. This guy is maybe 10 years younger than I am. So, he should have a little more sense. But he kept pushing back. I'm like, "Dude, I'm at my tipping point now. So this is the deal. If you want to go on, firewall it." Right? So he goes on, and I swear to God, he reaches in his pocket, pulls out his firewall, and I'm about to say, "No, no!" And he opens it and pulls out $2 and does the $100 bill fix. Um, and but I was like ready to attack. Anyway, I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent that I wasn't expecting to. But I guess my takeaway is that you have to be prepared for anything, especially when you're working with others. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also interesting, even on like finale magic shows, like in I'm trying to think, gala shows at magic conventions and such. I've been to ones
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they haven't done a crossover material check, where I've been at a convention and I've seen
Oh,
6
yeah,
juicy threads,
yeah, yeah,
or it's sort of like, I mean, I think what I was kind of talking about as well is where you're stitching in that material into your act, where
yeah.
it's overflowing and trying to kind of cross it over so it doesn't feel that like I'm doing one trick and moving into the next and then
Right.
moving into, oh, and for my next trick sort of thing, so it has a sense and it feels kind of complete. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's really odd when
yeah.
you kind of got that. And I've seen it also where I was aware at that same convention, but on a different occasion, where the one of the acts went, shit, he's just done that trick that I was going to do, and then had to sort of ratch around and think, right, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Because there's some things where a version can be different enough. We
Yeah.
might recognize a trick as ambitious card, but two people could present it very different. That could feel
Right.
like for an audience completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lay audience says, but also there's other things where like kind of approaches are sort of very different. I think Triumph is one of those where
Sure. Yeah.
there are loads of sort of different methods, but also kind of your presentation and purpose. So there are things that we might think of as being the same trick, but depending on how they're done, can be completely different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like to do the memorize jack, and I do like 4 or 5 different tricks using the same thing, and it appears like 4 or 5 different tricks, but I'm really doing the same thing, but it's just in it's dressed up differently and appears different because of that. Yeah. Uh, now I've seen you do the leaking rings, and I really love the way you do it. Um, Speaking of classic magic, a lot of people poo-poo the leaking rings because they are such a classic, and you hear newer musicians say, "Oh, I don't do the leaking rings because everybody else does it," and that's not really a good excuse, in my opinion, because um, I think everybody does it in a different way. Some people do it brilliantly. Unfortunately, some people don't, and those people should be shot and no. uh, but
Well, I think one of the things about the linking rings is it's a prop rather than a trick, or
exactly.
it's a prop rather than a routine. So the reality is that there's loads of different approaches to it, and it's interesting that when I was really working in that routine to begin with, so a little bit backtrack context. So I live in Sheffield. Sheffield had a bricks and mortars magic shop, which is recently just closed, but it has a really strong magic community.
Mm,
So there's a group that will meet pretty much every Saturday. Now it's not meeting in the shop, but we're now meeting in a pub. So the next best thing to a magic shop is a pub,
yeah.
and we've also we've got the Sheffield Circle of Magicians, of which I'm president. So we've got plenty of like sort of scope and area, and Sheffield is a university city. It's got
Okay.
two universities, and so sometimes you get international students. And what's really beautiful about that is sometimes they used to come into the shop, and it enriches your club because you get different perspectives and things. And there was a lad from China who was a magician. Like actually, he was really good. He had some really good material.
Nice.
So when he said I did a little bit, and then when you eventually saw a video of him performing his like school show, it was like, oh, that's a bit more than just a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit. And and he enjoyed my linking wings, but what he said about my linking wings is he said it was very European in style, which isn't surprising, but because it's quite elegant in the it's a little bit more musical in its sort of its flowingness. That's what my intention is for it anyway, or that's what I hope to get from it, to make it kind of flow it more lyrical. That's the word I was grasping for. As the intention behind the Chinese ones is they love making the noise. A Chinese version of the linking rings is very clanky, so like a lot of quite aggressive banging, but the intention is about making the shapes. So it's all leading up to making, the globe or the opening lotus or the chair and into those bits. And that's where their kind of routine comes into. Now, the one that I really don't like is where a ring starts to immediately float. It just doesn't feel like that's how it behaves. Whereas for me, the links are like these, especially when you can get a silent link. These aren't meant to do that.
Right.
We've established that they're solid. We may as well have established a brick solid and make the brick levitate. That will be a more interesting trick.
Yeah.
Than the ring certainly kind of levitating, because, but in a way, and some of the moves I really try to perfect now is this thing of where one's linked and unlinked and linked and unlinked and moving kind of across. But my routine is very much based on Richard Ross.
Okay.
So he was a Dutch magician and he won FISM with his act. So very much a manipulating act. Multiplying clocks was one of his big. Well, so he did a lot of kind of classic, but his rings really was a thing. And the 3-ring routine that he did was like kind of one part that he used within FISM, and then he had a longer ring routine, but he would still always, that part would be more or less the same. I've now sort of restructured it a little bit, added in a couple of different moves that he didn't do in kind of various points. And mine's very much more sort of like stage presentational. But then you see people who are doing, more what we now know as like ninja rings, or we accept as being called ninja rings. And that in a way is a very different trick. That's using the same familiar prop, but the intention is different. It's much more on audience interaction.
Right.
And that's great, And like I was saying earlier when I was explaining the type of magic that I do, the linking rings is one of those that if I'm doing them more street and having to stop people in crowd, it's way more interactive. Especially, or if I'm involving kids or what have you, do way more interaction. Whereas there's probably only one part of in my more formal setting where I will still have a member of the audience take a ring, because I think it's one of the strongest moments is when they know it's strong and fast.
Yeah.
2 rings and 1 in the middle, and when they can just pull that up.
Yeah.
The shame is that the way that kind of do it, only I get to see that reaction a lot of the time.
Right. Yeah. Actually, somebody did that last night at the IBM ring, and I don't think I had ever seen it done like that before. And for just a moment, I was like, oh, I like that. Yeah. So I don't think I remember seeing you do that before. But it's been a while, so I feel, yeah. Go ahead.
But it might just be one of those, it's one moment in a trip when you see a lot of magic that you might kind of remember that
exactly.
sort of one moment. But certainly for that spectator, it's kind of is an element there. But also, like, the rings is an interesting one as where to structure, because personally I really like opening with it. And I like opening with it because because it's probably one of my most comfortable routines, so it relaxes me. So that's kind of got a selfish purpose for kind of doing it. It
Okay.
also, especially if you're in a mixed bill kind of show, the likelihood is it's going to be very different to what other people have been doing. So it kind of has a bit of a dramatic effect, especially if I'm not first on.
Yeah.
You're suddenly into that, and especially if I'm in the white tie tails
Right.
sort of look,
Yeah.
that look, and when you've got the rings, it's without a doubt magician,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
it feels sort of familiar, but
Yeah.
it's also of a time gone by. So it's sort of a lot of people still have that image of a magician like that,
Right.
but they haven't necessarily seen it. And the
Right.
rings is almost like a symbol of magic,
Yeah.
the same way a wand is, in the same way a rabbit in the hat is, and the
Yeah.
same way a pack of cards
Yeah.
is. But the pack of cards is familiar because of from different contexts.
Right.
One's a little bit more familiar with the Harry Potter kind of craze that still kind of continues in a way,
Mm.
even though they don't look like ours.
Yeah. Exactly.
Although I'm looking at a jar of like 10 different styles of ones. But
Yeah. I have a number.
yeah, because we like props,
Right.
even if we don't do that many
Yeah.
different things. But the rings is still one of those. And actually, I think when it comes to it, a lot of people haven't necessarily seen the linking rings.
Yeah.
Large, especially in sort of like larger
Yeah.
scale stage version, because for scale wise, never too far away from them.
Right.
That's hefty. And when a child is holding the ring up for the link, it's quite
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Very nice.
just one little bit there.
Yeah.
Sat
Yeah.
down, not how but and the key ring was in the wrong hand, but there you go.
That's right.
But for the scale thing for kind of the kid, that's quite
Yeah,
something.
it
Because
was.
the
Yeah.
other thing is,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, their arms aren't as far away, so if
Right.
they hold the ring out there and I'm banging it, it's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try to get them to blink a lot when I do that.
Nice. Yeah.
Because they're kind of like the kids anime. But yeah, I think that's an interesting part with the linking rings, is that actually a lot of people haven't necessarily kind of seen it. But I also think it's really interesting when you see people kind of respond, especially in that sort of street environment, because you've always got people who want to go, it's got to try to tip the method.
Right. Right.
And it's sort of a bit like, it's one of those where I don't think I expect anybody in the room not to think
Yeah.
that they know how
Yeah.
it's done,
Yeah.
because that actually matters very little. I hope it's about kind of how well it's done, which again can sound a little arrogant, but it's more you make that prop be how you want it to be. So
Right.
either it can be lyrical, either it can be very much about shapes, either it can be very dramatic, or it's a way of involving an audience member, like Paul
Yeah.
Daniels one with, or Bob Hayden, very much about how you're
Yeah.
involving
Absolutely.
kind of
Yeah.
the audience in. And
Yeah.
it's actually less about what they're doing. It's more about what how that volunteer is responding. So I find that quite interesting. But yeah, the linking rings is kind of like a bit of a pet. But what I was going to say is where to position this. I like to open with it. But I was really lucky about it would have been before we met, Bat. So it was in January 2023.
Okay.
I was coming over to New York
Oh yeah.
just on holiday, and I got in touch with Monday Night Magic.
Oh
So
yeah.
I got to perform at Monday Night Magic
Oh
in
nice.
open day.
Yeah.
And when I said, my video in and with the routines, and they gave me a bit of feedback on it, and said, I'd love to have you, but maybe be a little bit livelier. You're a bit British with it, just step up
Okay.
the energy a bit, just for kind of an American audience. And he goes, I think you should close with the rings. Don't open with them. And you know, if anybody's watched enough episodes of Drag Race, whenever a judge tells you to do something effectively, you have to. If somebody gives you advice, you take it, because otherwise you're going to be called out for not having followed that advice.
Right.
And you know, at the end of the night, we'd gone out for dinner afterwards. It was, you know, I was really happy with how the performances. And Michael, who puts on the show, puts it all together, he said to me at the end, "And closing with the rings was better, wasn't it?" And I went, "Yeah, it was great." Next time I did a show, I still opened with it.
So yeah,
I'm not convinced it is necessarily better, but at the end of the day,
then Michael's out.
Yeah.
But
the guy who's booked you, if he tells you to do it last, you do it last.
Yeah, I understand where he's coming from, but I agree with you. I've seen people open with it. I've seen people put it in the middle of an act, and it works.
Yeah.
And I've seen people close with it. I think it really depends on the rest of your act. And Paul Draper opens with Galatian Rings. He doesn't do the full 8 or full 6. I think he only does 3. But, you know, he opens, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, you know.
But again, it's sort of different intentions, you know. He's doing his to establish or to set a scene or to kind of put it. But actually, when he did Blackpool most recently, he closed with it. But I was aware that he would usually used it as an opener. But he just kind of shows again, like it can have its purpose at different points.
Paul, Paul was on the show last week, and he mentioned that.
But it's also, I mean, one of the other things that I love doing is kind of a collar tie, like rope ties, the escape stuff. And, you know, kind of comic one where you've got the jacket held up and then your hands come out and you hold it and then you might move around and it's still tied. And then this kind of like Randy used to do. And and actually, you know, they said Monday Night Magic, I can't think how they've done 20 plus years now, and he said he thinks I'm only the third person to do that routine or to do that trick, you know, at Monday Night Magic. He was, so I was quite surprised at that. You know, it's one of those that
I know my friend Bobby Torkova has done it at Monday Night Magic. I'm trying to think who else. I used to go regularly.
I might be the third. He said I was the third. If your Bobby might be number one, and somebody else.
Yeah, Bobby used to be a regular there.
He'll be classing as performer, not about occasions that somebody's done. Exactly. The number of performers who have actually done that as a routine. Then. It's, but it goes to show things. Sometimes things that we think are kind of commonplace and such aren't necessarily the case. And they also, before auditioning or the exam, they call it for the Magic Circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the one I wanted to do in it, and somebody kind of advised and said, "Yeah, but it's just straight out of Wilson, isn't it? It's not got kind of skill." I kept it in because I knew the purpose I needed it to have. And I got in, so like I was kind of okay with that, but that kind of leads to this other point where it's all different perspectives, because points of reference and such. And in Sheffield, I'm very lucky that I know people of lots of different sort of generations and from Magic, and sometimes someone can do something or you see something and you say, "Oh, wow, that was amazing. I've never seen that before." Right. And they'll go, "Well, you've never seen that before. Oh, that's an old thing, that. Oh, God, yeah." Right. And it's because our reference points are are different. Now, I think there was a time where a lot of people say, if we segue slightly about card magic, because it's an easy thing to reference to. Everybody got Royal Road of Card Magic. They might have got the Joby Card College.
Right.
So particular methods, techniques, or sleights, everybody had that sort of track of learning.
Right. Yeah.
Now, a magician friend of mine who's who went to university in Sheffield. That's how I became part of the Sheffield kind of community. But he now lives and works in South Korea.
Oh, okay.
And he says it's amazing because they've either created their own methods of replicating from videos that they've seen because they're not following the Western magic books in the same way, or it's a total kind of different style and culture. And, you know, we had that injection with the sort of Spanish school, especially when we talk about card magic, because you had that culture that existed around, you know, key magicians like Ascanio or Tamaras, and that, but then that's that kind of like reference point. So somebody else could be doing something completely different, and then that segues once again, like might be really commonplace in their country or culture or magic club. But suddenly it's you know, it's different. But I just find that kind of like these points of reference, and I think what's going to happen, or what it feels is now people learning magic or starting to learn magic, they're not necessarily going through that sort of succession like apprenticeship. You know, Royal Road, you're starting with just the shuffling, just the mixing, and then there'll be a couple of tricks which is just about controlling a card from the top to the bottom.
Right.
And effectively, that's it. And then you might introduce some things like a slide or a glide, and you know, then you're moving into things like some false shuffles and cuts.
Yeah.
But now people are just going on YouTube, for example, and just seeing like a trick how to do it, and actually the foundations aren't there. I mean, and mentalism can suffer in a similar level where people are learning from or are trying to achieve an effect because they've from an app or from some level of electronics, but they haven't actually got the foundations there for if that electronics fail or if that app is down or something like that, and you still need to go on, can you do it?
Right.
You know,
you've made best friends with Barbie. Barbie hates electronics and apps, so I feel the same way. I have a couple on my phone, but I maybe use them like once a year. Apps, you know, there isn't anything an app can do that I can't do on my own. Using a different method. If you want to bring up, because I wanted to say it earlier, you used the word elegant and almost as an apology. And I just want to say, of the many magical effects that there are, the linking rings can be the most elegant thing a person can ever see. Beyond the grand scale illusions. And I think, the way you do it is very elegant. When I did it for years, back in the 70s and 80s, but I was a teenager trying to show off, and I really didn't understand the nuances that really go on with a really good leaky ring act. But I kind of did it with a cheeky comedy aspect, which worked fine the way it was, but It certainly wasn't elegant. Certainly was not elegant. Um, but um, I want to give you credit because I know you've come back into magic within the last decade or so, more than a decade, and you know, um, even you to me are just as professional as any other professional I've ever met in over 50 years. I mean that as a high compliment because every time I
Take it.
see every time I see you perform, um, you're there for the audience, and it really shows. No matter what kind of message you do. So I just wanted to say that because I know you do. We're starting to get to the end. I just wanted to say that before while I
Yeah, I
had,
appreciate it.
yeah.
I think, but it's quite funny because maybe we'll finish on kind of this element, which is so we met, we might have crossed paths potentially at Blackpool prior, but we certainly met properly at Doomsday,
Okay, yeah.
and I won the Hex Factor
There we
competition
go.
the year
Yes,
before.
yeah, right.
Which for me was quite a thing. I mean, like my main job and things had a bit of flux there, and it wasn't quite like a good time. And actually, winning a competition can give you tremendous self-worth when you,
Yeah,
especially kind of at a
yeah,
low point. So for me, it was an amazing moment. And there's a great amount of banter, and we call Doomsday now a family, which it is, and I've been to so
yeah,
many
yeah,
now, like it's become a very much kind of one of my things, although it's not my primary type of sort of magic. So I get labeled as the light entertainer, and as a joke, and that's as banter and kind of things like that. And it's funny where some people go, oh yeah, but you won it doing Linking Wings. Well, I didn't win it doing Linking Wings. I won it doing an act which was based purely about Houdini and his story, and it begins with the in-out rope escape, like rope ties. It has a book test, which is largely my own method. It's a variation on things, but largely my own
nice,
method.
yeah.
And and spirit slate, and finishing
Mm-hmm.
with the needles.
Nice,
So
yeah,
actually, you've got escapology into that. You've got seance magic into that. You've
right,
got
right,
sideshow into that. So you've
right.
got so many elements of bizarre. But I'm not stood there telling a ghost story. I'm not taking
Right,
15 minutes to do
right.
it. I'm putting a lot of magical content into my 12 minutes or whatever I had. It
Mm-hmm.
had a theatrical structure. It had a story kind of to it. I also felt it had clarity, which I think in that particular night, some of the acts didn't quite have clarity. And
Mm-hmm.
so certainly when people are performing at a table and in a big
Mm-hmm.
room,
Mm-hmm.
people at the back can't see, so they don't care.
Right,
Whereas by
yeah,
elevating stuff up and by finding clarity and then not trying to throw too many ideas in there, that helps. The other
mm,
thing which I think is quite important is that was material that I've done for a while.
right.
And I'd
Mm,
entered in various competitions before and not won because I was trying to do new stuff. I was trying to aim out to impress rather than just go out to say, like, this is who I am. And actually, when I think you've got a little bit more feel of going, well, do you know what? Nothing to lose. I'll just go out and say, this is who I am.
right, yeah,
And actually,
yeah,
so that was great. So what you saw then was they have this really strange idea that they think has a prize for winning
yeah.
X Factor. And what would be nice for you to do is to do a full slot, which
Mm,
of course is awful because you don't enjoy your weekend at all because of the stress of then having to perform a full show in front of your peers and such like that. So I wasn't
right.
100% happy with my performance, but
Yeah, yeah,
it had some kind of good moments to it. There was curate egg, as the phrase goes. There were some parts which were better than others,
yeah.
and and I think anybody who's ever performed at Doomsday, especially, always kind of feels like that about themselves because it's kind of quite an intense but
Right.
brilliant weekend.
Yeah.
And actually, it said a lot more about the audience who couldn't necessarily recognize the bazaar where it was, but also the amount. I was performing at a Bazaar Magic convention. I did the linking rings then, and that was the thing that most people came up to talk to me about afterwards. And I found that the most bizarre thing, because actually I put in it, I had a trick which was voodoo themed. I had this I had elements of all levels of bizarre and story. There was lots of story within that, but yet the thing that people took away from them was the linking rings, and that's probably because it was different to anything else that we've seen the whole weekend.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we can be like, well, we're not like them or we're not like them, well, actually the difference is probably our greatest strength when we come to that sort of thing as the magic. So,
Yeah.
if linking rings does become my thing, hopefully there's other tricks as well, but it's a routine I'd be proud to have as a signature. But I think it's kind of become that one. But enjoy doing it, and obviously we've talked largely about it this time, but but my interests are kind of very broad. And really, when I stopped doing magic in like teenage years and such like that, and then kind of went off to university, I got obsessed into theatre. So I was doing arts criticism and curation. So I really want to be art historian. Then it kind of became more. I moved to London for university. Saw so many shows, just got really interested in it. Then did theatre studies as my master's degree, so it's postgraduate, and then was working in theatres and that. And then from that, that's where I wanted, like, from working in theatre, getting that performance itch. And that's where the magic came back to it. So my like professional experience had been very much running theatres and venues, buildings. That's like kind of professional thing. But I've been around and seen a lot of performances, and I think that hopefully kind of is the influence. But yeah, so that is me.
Well,
and we're finishing on like a really dramatic dark light now,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Down here.
Yeah,
Ooh.
we'll finish with a Vincent Price story, maybe.
Yeah. Luke, thank you so much for joining us this evening, afternoon. Um, I really miss talking with you. We didn't talk a lot, but when we did, it really touched me. So I'm very honored to have you here today. And I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, Luke Robson, please give him a round of applause. And it is time. So, Luke, if you don't have to go right away, I'm going to put you in the waiting room, not in the waiting room, with everybody else just for a minute, and then we can say goodbye after the show. But if you do have to run, that's okay.
No, I can hang about a bit. Yeah.
Perfect. So thanks again, and yeah, I'll talk to you in a few minutes. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that discussion. Luke is in my opinion, a force to be reckoned with, and I think he will be if he continues the way he's gone. He may end up being the Lincoln Ring guy. And people are, oh well, yeah, I've been doing Luke Robson's routine, and no, you have to do it this way. But yeah, next week we have a friend to this show and to the Wednesday night open mic that That's presented by Kevin Peele and Robin or Rabina. And that person is Mr. Micah Culver.
You've been watching Beyond Belief with your host, Tommy Burnett. Thank you to Luke Robson. See you next time. Next week's guest is Micah Cover, July 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, that was fun.